family, and I feel about myself.
A Tennessee teacher charged with raping her underage student is now allegedly pregnant with the 12-year-old's unborn child. For the first time, we're hearing her side of the story straight from her defense attorney. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Sierra Gillespie. Now, it's a story Law&Crime Network has been following since it broke in early September. That's when 38-year-old Alyssa McCommon was arrested for the first time after prosecutors say she raped one of her former students in her own home. Investigators say McCommon, who taught school in Covington, Tennessee, about an hour northeast of Memphis, used video games to contact her former students outside of school. After that, officials say the conversations spilled over into social media apps, which led to explicit photos being sent. In late August, Tennessee investigators were tipped off about the issue when the 12-year-old victim's parents came forward. Since then, multiple of McCommon's former students have also made similar allegations. As Law&Crime Network reported, McCommon was released on $25,000 bond after her first arrest. But just weeks later, she was back in the Tipton County Jail after she allegedly contacted one of her victims.
I will never text you again. You will never hear from me again. Just please don't say anything. I'm under so much stress and I'm so scared all the time.
Investigators say prior to either of McCommon's arrests, she used a code word to communicate with students. They say the special word was used to ensure the victim was alone at the time, and after that, prosecutors say McCommon would send explicit photos to the students. They also say she used that same code word while out in bond last month to message the boy with threatening comments, saying he would regret going to the authorities. After her second arrest on September 28th, prosecutors alleged she used that code word again. For that, she was charged with harassment, coercion of a witness, and stalking. This time, she's being held without bond. But days after her arrest, this shocking voice recording was played in open court, alleging McCommon is now pregnant with the 12-year-old boy's child.
I tried to tell you when it comes out. I'm looking like you. We don't have to talk anymore. Just please, God, tell me you're not going to say anything. I'll never speak to you again.
We've heard from prosecutors and investigators, but for the first time, we're hearing McCommon's side of the story straight from her defense attorney, Jerry Mason. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start at the very top. Your client maintains her innocence?
Yes, she was accused, obviously, I guess we're working on 6 weeks or so ago, of, a very serious offense. And she denies her guilt in that charge, and then also maintains her innocence on the follow-up charges that she acquired while on bond.
So this is a story at Law&Crime we've been covering since it first broke in early September, but we've had multiple follow-up stories because more developments continue to come. The most recent involves a voice recording that was played in court with an alleged bombshell, a pregnancy bombshell. What do you have to say about that recording?
Well, I mean, my focus is on what was actually presented in court, and I think it's important for everyone to understand that this was not a trial. This was a bond revocation hearing. The judge only had to hear enough evidence, in the judge's opinion, to rise to probable cause, which is a very low burden of proof, to decide whether she would reinstate the original bond or set a new bond. And she felt there was at least enough probable cause to hold Ms. McCommon with no bond at the moment. So she did revoke the bond. As far as the recording that was played, the only verification that they had that was Ms. McCommon was a detective who admitted that he had only spoke with her very briefly several weeks ago. The voice was very agitated on there, so I assume when he spoke with her, she wasn't. I just think that it was limited evidence presented that it was her. Now, that's not to say it was or wasn't her. I don't know. I mean, it's just what the proof is going to show, and they didn't present a victim, alleged victim or anything. They just had the detective testify that was her voice. That was literally the only proof that was from her. And they had text messages also, but neither the text number or the voice call number is registered anywhere. So they had no record of where the phone number ties to, who it's tied to, and they still don't have the phone. So, I mean, I understand the judge's position, but it was limited proof on it actually being Miss McCommon.
I was going to ask about that number that was not registered. That's kind of interesting, something I haven't seen very much. So, what do we do moving forward with that? Is that something that the defense is going to try to combat and say, okay, we looked it up, it is not McCommon's phone number? What are the next steps there?
Well, I don't know that there's much we will do on that end. At this point, it's the burden is all on the state. It's what they present, and I know that they're trying to locate this phone. I talked to one of the detectives, and I don't think the phone was on, but they said there was some way they could maybe trace where the phone was. I'm not sure how they do all that, but I know they're looking for the phone. I think they did confirm the number was from one of the phones that a lot of people will buy and dispose of. So I don't know where the phone came from. I don't know if they can trace where that phone originated, where it was purchased, anything like that. All I know is for the moment, to my knowledge, they don't have the phone or confirmation who the number goes to.
And again, this is a story that people across the country have been following for weeks. But after the announcement, I guess, during court with that recording saying that someone is pregnant, it made a lot more news. So that's what I kind of want to focus on now. Have you spoken with McCommon? Is she pregnant?
Well, I can't confirm or deny any of that at this moment. I know basically what what you guys had heard from the hearing. To my knowledge, there's no medical evidence right now that she is or isn't pregnant. That's yet to be seen. I will say that I started the hearing off, and this has not gotten a lot of coverage. I requested a continuance based on a motion I filed for a mental evaluation of Miss McCommon. And my position on that was there had been some statements made to me that gave me pause on my ability to represent her. Part of what, as a defense lawyer, I have to be comfortable with is that the information I'm getting from my client is accurate and reliable, and they understand everything. And I mean, anyone, again, not to make light of the allegations, but anyone in this position, guilty or innocent, is going to be under tremendous mental pressure. And I just felt that there was no reason to push a hearing forward when I was agreeing to postpone the hearing and allow her to stay in jail, no risk to anyone, just to do the mental evaluation so we could then check that box to see, some outside entity could tell us what her current state is if she understood everything. And the judge did grant my motion for the mental evaluation, which is probably going to happen this week, and then denied the continuance motion. The next hearing, the judge said, is supposed to be the preliminary hearing on all the allegations, but the judge did say that 10 more she would check with the lawyers to see if we've gotten the results of the mental evaluation. I anticipate if we have not gotten those results, the judge will probably continue that preliminary hearing.
That's definitely something that we'll follow up on here, whether those results are made public, if the hearing is postponed, things like that. So that is definitely good to know. But if we zero in on McCommon's alleged interactions here with her former students, this is where it all began. Before she was arrested the second time, before this pregnancy bombshell, with these alleged interactions with her former students. So does she deny contacting her students at all?
Well, she hasn't done either at the moment. I mean, as I stated, the state is the only one that's put any proof on, and we're not at a point yet where we put on any even defenses, honestly, other than just state her position, which is she says she's not guilty of the offenses. So I only know what you know, and I can't confirm or deny whether she had contact with them. I will say this. This is something that I thought was interesting, but nobody else is covering. My child was her student. My youngest son was in her class in 5th grade, and she was a great teacher. We had no problems with her. We've even been friends with her and her husband for a long time. I was a deputy here in Tipton County, and so was he, and we were deputies together. And so we were very friendly, and that's kind of how they knew me. So, I mean, I've known her for a while, and saying that doesn't mean that she's innocent, obviously, and I hope it doesn't mean that I have any bias towards her, because I'm going to do my job regardless. But I have known them, and they were not, just on a personal note, she never struck me as anyone that would do anything like this. So, we'll just have to see what the proof holds out on all that.
That is an interesting fact that you said that your son was actually in her class. So did you see any red flags? Would you, at this point, be uncomfortable if your son happened to be alone with her?
Well, I mean, it's very likely he could have been alone in the room with her. I'm not sure. I did ask him how his relationship was with her then and now, and he's very complimentary of her. Says nothing awkward or weird ever happened. She's a good teacher. She's not contacted him since then. He's 18 now, but he is a senior in high school. But he would have been, 12, 13 at the time in her in elementary school. And I did ask him if he's in the same school where the alleged victim is, and I asked him what kids are going to talk, and so what are they saying? Are there kids saying anything? And he said that he knew of no one that was saying anything other than she had been a good teacher with them. But like I also said, I know that people do different things behind closed doors, so I'm not trying to be blind to anything that my client may or may not have done. Again, I just focus on what proof has been presented. And in my opinion, we just got limited proof right now that any of this allegations occurred.
If we're looking at the timeline of this case so far, in early September was McCommon's first arrest. What was her reaction at that point when those initial charges of rape were brought on?
Oh, she was shocked. Her and her husband both were just, they acted shocked about the whole incident. She had been a teacher for years and, taught hundreds, I would suppose, maybe thousands of students. And, this is the first time something like this came up. So, yeah, she was very surprised.
So then if we're moving forward to her second arrest just a couple weeks ago in late September, she had been out on bond after that first arrest, but then is arrested again. And prosecutors are saying this is because she directly violated bond and contacted one of the alleged victims. I guess, what do you have to say about that half of things?
Yeah, well, so it was a bond condition. And so if it's proven that she did try to contact an alleged victim, then yeah, that's a violation of the bond conditions and probably fulfills some of the criteria for the offense. But again, my position is there's just limited evidence that she did. There's two sides to that too. So if she didn't, obviously, then she's not guilty of these new offenses. But if she did, that gives me pause, on the mental state, because she got very lucky. We were able to get her a very reasonable bond considering the charge. And honestly, I believe the prosecutor and we were very surprised by the initial bond. It was very low. And I think there were other factors that played into why the first judge set such a low bond. In any event, she was kind of lucky that she had that bond. So I would be shocked if someone got out on such a low bond and had the opportunity to remain free. And honestly, it would have probably been through spring. The way that most of these cases in Tennessee, especially Tipping County, the way most of them work, they don't do this where they arrest them in general sessions court. They don't arrest them and then they come in and they have a prelim. And part of the reason for that is, like, for instance, the preliminary hearing, they're probably going to have to put a victim on. Well, if a victim has really been victimized, why would you re-victimize them multiple times and have them testify? And so if you arrest the person and put them in through sessions court, there's a prelim that, as a decent lawyer, I'm not going to waive the prelim. So they know that this juvenile or juveniles, whoever it is going to have to testify. So then the problem becomes it moves to circuit court in Tennessee, which is our trial court. And at that court, there could be a trial where, again, they may have to testify. So we were aware something was coming beforehand. They had contacted her. She knew that they were talking to her about it. That's why they came and talked to us. So I immediately reached out to the detectives and the district attorney to let them know that a direct correspondence to me. And everybody sort of had an understanding that this would go through a circuit in a way to protect alleged victims, because it's possible once you get to circuit court and the prosecutor gives me, we do discovery, we have motions practice, all these things in circuit. We start to see what evidence is or isn't there. Well, if it's just insurmountable evidence, there might have been some form of negotiated plea. And again, the juveniles may have never had to testify. So we were all very surprised when the Covington Police Department decided to go ahead and arrest her anyway. And I do feel at the time it was probably prompted by all this media attention on the case, instead of doing it the normal way that we would do it. However, if they did that and then she gets out on bond and did do any of these allegations on bond, well, it could have been correct. But that is all yet to be seen. That's the thing is, right now she's being crucified by the court of public opinion. And, even I don't know what the proof's going to show.
So you mentioned the relatively low bond the first time, $25,000, saying that you and others were shocked by it. But now she's being held without bond. Do you think that that is the appropriate response?
I mean, if she did violate bond terms, I could see that being the appropriate response. But I felt like in the bond revocation hearing, the proof was very limited that she did. I was very surprised. I thought the judge was probably going to set, because again, the optics on the case do affect it. These judges and prosecutors, and I suppose myself included, realize there's a lot of eyes on the case, and it won't necessarily change what you would or wouldn't do, but you're very aware of what the public is seeing and thinking. And so what I thought would happen is that she would probably get a really high bond, $500,000 or something like that, which would be high for this area. And then, I'd already talked to her family. They're not wealthy people, so it's very unlikely that she would have gotten out. But the judge just felt that the text messages and the phone call was sufficient to meet the burden required to revoke the bond. And that's what the judge decided to do.
I wanted to touch on a couple of things you just brought up. You mentioned McCommon saying that she had been crucified in the court of public media, talking about how this is a case that's been covered, coast to coast across the nation. So I'm wondering, why are you speaking out now? What is McCommon's reaction to all this publicity?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, she didn't say that. I did. So, and, as a defense lawyer, we typically, well, everybody's different, but we typically don't speak out on this kind of stuff. But this case has gotten so much media attention, social media attention. There was a site that was literally devoted to, and I was misquoted in one interview. I made the comment that it was basically a witch hunt now, and I wasn't referring to McCommon. I was referring to how the public is just crucifying anybody even associated with her, like other teachers, coaches, the lawyers, the nobody was safe. The DA's office, the detectives, like everybody, it's just crazy. It's largely based on ignorance. But the problem we have on our end is, you always prep a case like you're going to trial. And if I'm going to trial on a case like this, one, I have to attempt to get an alternative narrative out there. I have to attempt to let the public say, oh, wait, our Constitution guarantees her a defense no matter what. And the state has to be held to the burden to prove that she did any of this, which has not happened yet. So I don't want jurors on there that have seen all this stuff and, are so biased against her that there's just no way she can get a fair trial. So we track everything. We have a paralegal specifically assigned to track all the media attention, all the social media interactions, and we file all that stuff because I feel very likely there's probably going to be a motion to change venue in this. But then the question is, where do you change venue on a case like this? So, but that's sort of why we are open to speaking, at least limited what I can speak to, because it's just important for people to realize whether she's guilty or innocent. These are heinous crimes. I mean, obviously, this is terrible. And I would hate for anyone to be a victim of something like this. And, I don't like folks that have done this kind of stuff. I'm human too, right? However, my job is to protect her rights, period. And it's constitutionally guaranteed, whether she did or didn't do this. Right now, she maintains her innocence. Right now, she is innocent. As she sits right now, she's innocent. And so the state has the burden to prove she's guilty. So until she does that, right now, I know the prosecutors are speaking some, the detectives and the police chief are speaking. So we just need to make sure that the public at least hears that alternative narrative.
No, you yourself just mentioned it. These are some pretty serious accusations, not just rape, but then we also have coercion of a witness, all against a 12-year-old, a boy, a student. So I've spoken to multiple experts about this case throughout multiple different news stories I've done. Many of them say the prosecution has a very strong case against McCommon. So how do you, the defense, plan to combat that?
Well, that's interesting because none of us have seen all of the evidence. I mean, literally all we have right now is an allegation from an unproven witness that has not testified. I don't even know who that is. So like in Tennessee in Sessions Court, I'm not entitled to discovery evidence. So it's interesting that experts think that it's just a nailed case when I don't even have all the proof. That's scary to me that people think that, it's insurmountable when we don't see the evidence yet. So that's yet to be seen. Now, I mean, there's obviously some things that could come out that would significantly change the case and change the landscape of if there's a defense. But we deal with a lot of cases that are he said, she said. Another thing you just mentioned. So the allegation is initially a rape of a child, which is an A felony. And the allegation is some obviously inappropriate occurrence happened when the child was 12. Well, my understanding is that was years ago. So the second follow-up allegations of the coercion of a witness and harassment and all that, that's on an older. I want to say the allegation is against a 15-year-old who potentially could have been the alleged 12-year-old. I don't even know that. I don't know the names of the alleged victims. I don't know anything about them other than what you do. So again, I would ask that everyone, experts included, reserve judgment until we actually see what the proof is. And it could go either way. I don't know. We'll see. But no, my position is all we've had presented in proof is an affidavit that is unproven. We don't have a witness. We don't know who the alleged victim is. We don't have a statement from the alleged victim. I don't even have a written statement yet from an alleged victim to look at. And then all they presented in that bond revocation hearing was text messages from an unregistered number without the phone. They don't know where the phone is. And then a phone call that is claimed to be Miss McCommon, but the only proof that was her was that it heard her one time weeks ago. It's just not as strong as people are saying that it is. Now, it might grow and become super strong. I don't know. But I just wish people would be patient because the system is set up for a reason. The state has the burden to prove it. And until and unless they do that, she's innocent right now.
This is definitely a case that we're going to want to continue to follow as more developments come. I mean, you mentioned we're still in the early stages here. So, Jerry, we really do appreciate you taking the time to give us Alyssa McCommon's side of things.
I appreciate you guys listening to our side of things. Thank you.
Right now, McCommon is still being held without bond in the Tipton County Jail. She's due back in court in November. Reporting for Law&Crime Network, I'm Sierra Gillespie.